Hello guys, Matthew here and welcome back again to the TechTick YouTube channel. Nvidia's new Pascal GPU architecture and I meet once again, but this time through the second in line and a bit weaker model, the GTX 1070, which is actually my first encounter ever with it, while it's also, like with the GTX 1080, coming in from MSI and their Gaming X version. As you can see, the product box is basically completely the same as with the GTX 1080 Gaming X model. On the front you can see this big picture of the graphics card, and in the left bottom corner we have a mention of the Twin Frozer 6 cooler. On the back you will find some more information about it, different features pointed out along with it, specifications and other technical details laid out, as well as a notion of the RGB LED lighting. Opening up the box accepts some user manuals, optical disc with drivers and software, promotional material and stickers. You won't find anything else interesting in regards of the bundle. And here's the graphics card itself. If you watched my video on the MSI's GTX 1080 Gaming X 8G model, you can probably notice that this GTX 1070 model compared to it brings little to none difference at all. That's actually not a surprise since those two GPUs only differ in few points, but other than that there was no real reason for MSI not to use basically the same good quality cooler and PCB design on the GTX 1070 Gaming X model, just like the one found on the GTX 1080 model. The card is the same size and length, counting in again 279mm, carrying a big aluminum cooler with 6 nickel-plated copper heat pipes which are up to 8mm thick and topped off with MSI's 100mm Torx 2.0 fans. Custom 10-phase power design and PCB are also present, and you can see some of the added heatsinks for it on the back, as well as some other passive heatsinks all around the PCB for better cooling of the surrounding components. The plastic outer shroud carries those same red LED stripes, while you can find the MSI's RGB LED logo on the side, right next to the connectors for the SLI bridge. Of course, the big metal backplate is also present with this cool looking pattern and MSI's Dragon logo. All in all, once again, we got ourselves a well-equipped, great looking and good quality build graphics card. Last but not the least, for powering up, this model also uses a combination of one 8-pin and one 6-pin PCI Express power connector, while for video outputs we have 3 display ports 1.4 ready, one HDMI 2.0B and one DVI-D. So what's the main difference between the GeForce GTX 1070 and the GeForce GTX 1080? Of course, before all we have the CUDA core count, which GTX 1070 has 640 less. The other elephant in the room is the fact that the GTX 1070 is fitted with your regular 8GB of GDDR5 video memory versus the 8GB of GDDR5X memory on the GTX 1080. In translation, that means less bandwidth and overall less performance, but nothing too unexpected, as you will see later on in my testing. Just upon publishing my review of the GTX 1080 Gaming X 8G model, I found out from various different sources that MSI shipped the cards to reviewers with OC mode enabled by default, which later on MSI confirmed and explained, saying that reviewers rarely discover the OC mode over the regular gaming mode. Putting that aside, either way, I think that you as a user of this card should use the OC mode anyway, as it brings that extra performance and there is no reason or concern for you not to use it over the gaming mode. If it's up to me, I would use that GPU clock speed from the OC mode as a default GPU clock speed and remove all other modes, but it seems that MSI wanted to give that extra level of control to the user over their MSI Dragon Eye software. For this time I've decided to do the testing using both the OC mode and the gaming mode, so you can compare the difference between those two. Taking a look at the results and the performance of the card, just as its stronger brother, the GTX 1070 chews down practically any AAA game on high settings and high resolution. Although I don't have a 4K monitor, my 21:9 3440x1440 gave it a run for its money. Considering that it's a quite cheaper alternative to the GTX 1080, the GTX 1070 is offering a much better value for your money, and it could easily follow the footsteps of its predecessor, the GTX 970. The only thing left to do is to lower down the hype and bring up the availability of the card, which is due around August, so the prices can go down a bit, while you can also expect that the soon release of the AMD's RX 480 will have some influence on it price-wise. Last but not the least, you can probably notice the difference between the OC mode and the gaming mode is actually not that big, few FPS at most. Just as with the GTX 1080, the GPU boost clock speed went way above the original figures thanks to the Nvidia's GPU Boost 3.0 technology, and in this case I was reaching around 1950 to 1980 MHz. The maximum core clock value which was reached in the gaming mode was about 20 to 30 MHz lower than in the case when using the OC mode, so basically the same difference compared to the original difference of those two models and their base clock figures. Taking the matter in my own hands, I've managed to do some further manual overclocking and achieved around plus 130 MHz on the GPU core clock speed and plus 780 MHz on the memory. With those settings I was reaching around 2050 to 2080 MHz for the GPU clock speeds, and together with the memory overclocked I gained quite a nice bump in performance, as you can see it here. Cooler performance-wise, I was seeing 41 degrees Celsius in idle, which is a bit higher than with the GTX 1070 Founders Edition models, but you must count in the fact that this model has MSI Zero Frozer 0 RPM fan mode, which make the fans completely turn off, making the card dead silent while idling. The fan basically only turns on if the GPU temperature is above 60 degrees Celsius under load, and speaking of it, the maximal recorded low temperature in my case on an open test bed was 68 degrees Celsius. Under the manual overclocking settings you will see a degree or two more, while card being equally loud as with the stock settings, or in translation very quiet, just as its bigger brother. Finally, here we have the already mentioned MSI's Dragon Eye software, which I also covered in the GTX 1080 Gaming X video, and which lets you fiddle around with some of the basic settings. Most important one, except the different modes for the GPU clock speed, probably being the control of the LED lighting. That's it guys for this time. Thank you once again for checking out the unboxing and review of the MSI's GeForce GTX 1070 Gaming X HG graphics card. Feel free to give this video a thumbs up if you like it, leave a comment down below if you have any questions about the product, and of course if you would like to see more content like this you can subscribe to the TechTick YouTube channel, or you can just check out some of the other videos from before.